Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And first let me say that last week's viewer's favorite question was spontaneity from Sweet Strong Woman. Congratulations, Sweet Strong Woman. And today our question comes to us from Sean096. And Sean096 has a question about binding and attachments, and his question is this. Is it ever a good idea to bind yourself to another person? And can we in fact ever truly bind ourselves to another person anyway? And my answer to this is that in life we form attachments to other people and to situations and sometimes to ideas. These are spiritual attachments that draw us back to these things until we've learned all there is for these things to teach us. And therefore my answer to the question, can you ever really bind yourself to another person, is, oh yes, absolutely. Not only can you, but you do it constantly and unconsciously. So, can you do this? Absolutely. Now, as to the first part of the question, is it ever a good idea to do this in a conscious manner? That's a different question. And in particular, people often try to do this in hand fastings. And my personal point of view is that yes, it can be a very nice thing to do if you do it intelligently. A lot of people want to try to bind themselves to another person for all time, which I think is one of the stupidest things you could ever do, because you don't know what all time is going to bring. And I don't think you can actually bind yourself to another person that way, because eventually you will learn all the lessons and that attachment will go away. But to try to bind yourself to someone in that way, with no limit to it, I think is very, very foolish. Now, I think that when people, for example, go into hand fastings and try to spiritually bind themselves, as long as love shall last, or things that are similar to that, I think are very wonderful. And I think it's perfectly appropriate to bind yourself to another person in a spiritual way when you have a really good relationship, as long as it's not binding you forever regardless of what happens in that relationship. So, my advice is if you're going to do that in a hand fasting, an adoption, or any other situation, do it in a way that allows for the eventual possibility that you will want to go your own way. And if you do that, I think that you will find it a much more positive experience. And I have a story for you about just such a situation. There was once a man who was in love with a woman, and they had had a relationship for several years. They had been married and they had divorced. But they both still had strong feelings for each other, and they decided to remarry. And in their hand fasting ceremony, they had the line about binding themselves to one another as long as love shall last. And in the ceremony, the man swore that he would be bound to the woman as long as love shall last, but the woman, whose temperament was different, swore that she would be bound to the man as long as life should last. And the marriage went bad very quickly. Within a year it was pretty much over with. It became very acrimonious, unlike the first marriage when it dissolved. And they went their own way relatively quickly and very angrily. But the man, who had bound himself to the woman only so long as love should last, was able to move on from this. Many years later he would learn that the woman had died, and he would discover through her acquaintances that she had remained obsessed with him until the end of her life. But why wouldn't she when she had bound herself to it? It's not what you want to do. As long as life shall last, no. As long as love shall last, yes. Or for a certain period of time, or anything else that allows for change, because change is the only constant in life, and you must anticipate it. And sometimes that wonderful relationship will go on for many lifetimes. However, the likelihood that it's always going to be wonderful is not extremely high. So I advise being very careful how you bind yourself to another person, particularly in this kind of situation, but in any. But I wouldn't say that it's never a good idea, and sometimes it can be very positive. Now, behind me you will see my artwork that I've been working on. You can see I've made some progress with it, and I thought I would share it with you this evening. And as you can see, I've repainted the papyrus and made it a little bit darker. I've filled in the figures, although they're far from being finished, but I thought I would share with you the progress, and I'm hoping to make quite a bit more before I begin my travels for the summer. So, I hope that you enjoy watching it come along, and I hope that you enjoy today's vlog, and until next time, may you blessed be.